Right.
We are now, yes.
Okay. Welcome everyone to our Heritage Advisory Committee meeting on Tuesday, April 16th. We're going to begin with our land acknowledgement statement. At the town of New Tecumseh, we acknowledge that we are on the treaty lands and traditional territory of the Anishinaabe peoples, specifically the Ojibwe, Chippewa, Odawa, and Potawatomi peoples, collectively known as the Three Fires Confederacy. This land is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. New Tecumseh is covered by the Lake Simcoe Nottawasaga Treaty No. 18th, signed on October 17, 1818 with the Chippewa Nation. We acknowledge that we are all treaty people and accept our responsibility to honor all our relations and move forward in the spirit of reconciliation and respect. So welcome everyone. We haven't had a meeting for a while, so as Chris said, Happy New Year. Feels like spring is a new year, so I'm really happy to be moving into this new year of springtime and welcoming the birds back and the flowers. So I'm going to start off by looking for confirmation of agenda. Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Thank you. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Well, if something comes up, you can always declare at that time. Have there been any requests to speak? No. Okay. So for future reference, if there are any members of the public wishing to provide input regarding an item on the agenda, they can pre-register with the committee secretary by filling out a form. Summary report. So we received the summary report dated October 17th, 2023. Did anybody have anything that they wanted to pull or speak to on the summary report? If you wanted a moment to review it, we can take a look at that. There was the Stevenson parking, which came forward to council, and your comments were received. Does anybody... There was also, you know what, there was something that Vanessa pulled from the summary report, and it was a motion that's been circulating from other municipalities about the expiry date for protection of heritage properties listed under the Ontario Heritage Act. And she was looking for the committee to put a recommendation forward for the same kind of recommendation to council, that we look for an extension to the deadline on this. So if that's something that the committee would like to see done, I would certainly be in support of that. It would give our staff more time. We can always ask. So therefore, I would say that we can work off of the council motion template that was forwarded to us. If you want to open up your summary report, it's on page 9. Essentially, I don't really want to read the whole thing unless I must. Must I? Staff, do I need to read it?
Sorry, Shira, sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
We are going to speak to this in new business.
Oh, perfect.
The second item.
Okay, thank you. I have to move my documents around. Okay, so let's move forward then. So nothing on the summary report. So moving on to item number 2, deputations and presentations. We have presentation from Caitlin Cosgrove, Senior Planner. So on to you.
Hi, thank you very much. I'm just going to start sharing my screen here. So I'll be speaking to 2 items tonight. First, I'll be presenting on the growth management study, and then I'll be presenting on the Beaton Heritage District. Okay. Carrie, am I able to share my screen? It says I am not able to.
I've just made you a co-host, so
Thank you.
It should be okay now.
Okay, no, it says I cannot share my screen.
Hmm.
That's all right. If you wouldn't mind posting, I believe I emailed them to you,
You did.
so maybe we can have you present for me, if
Okay.
you don't mind.
Yeah, not at all.
Okay.
Hmm. Sorry, I have a lot of things. Hold on here. Okay, here we go. Caitlin, I think you're on mute. Sorry.
I am. Thank you
Sorry.
That's okay. So tonight I'm going to be presenting the growth management study, which the planning department is undertaking along with a number of different departments within the municipality. And we'll get started. Can I have the next slide, Carrie? Thank you. All right, so we'll start off with a little bit of background here. So Fort Alliston is established as a primary settlement area by the province of Ontario. The town endorsed our settlement area boundary expansion evaluation criteria this year, and our growth forecasts for that expansion came from a land needs assessment figures established through the Simcoe County Official Plan Amendment number 7 and by the province of Ontario. The focus of study area was ratified by Council on January 29th, and our draft growth scenarios were released for input from our community at large February 28th. Our next slide, please, Carrie. We are projected to grow by over 77% over the next 30 years in population. Our employment is supposed to grow as well and increase by 52% over the next 30 years. The land we need for residential growth is approximately 448 hectares in size and 75 hectares in size for employment. We have estimated that 6,917 residential units are proposed for the expansion in the communities of Alliston, Beaton, and Tottenham. And we'll go into growth scenarios next. Carrie, thank you. So this slide here outlines the importance for quality of life and human health. So listed here are the characteristics of vibrant communities, which we would like to consider when you're having your say of part of engagement opportunities or surveys. So we'll just go through them. The first one is a compact and walkable community to foster public interaction and give residents that sense of place. We'd like to encourage active transportation for walking, cycling, and public transit use. We'd like to provide a mixed range of housing type and affordability options for people of all ages and stages. We want to have ample recreational facilities and parks for all members of our community. We want to make sure that there's a range of employment opportunities for people to live and work in their community. We want to ensure that there's access to healthy local foods. We would like to design our spaces to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and address climate change through design and standards. We also want to ensure that we protect our farmland and natural environmental areas. And now we're going to get into our growth scenarios. So growth scenario 1 essentially projects 98% of proposed growth to Alliston. So in scenario 1, we basically, when we're looking to expand our settlement boundary areas, we want to ensure that we use community lands first. and then we transition employment lands before we access our rural and our agricultural lands. We really try to avoid to a reduction of agricultural lands. So in this instance here, in scenario 1, as I mentioned, it allocates 98% of growth to Alliston, and that includes 380 hectares north of the settlement area and 100 hectares to the east. You can see here, so this is the north end of Alliston. On our screens here, you can see that King Street, it's north of King Street, and then to the other side we have Adjtos and Essa to the north. Next slide, please. We are looking at a minor, this is the south expansion that I mentioned here. It's just south of the 14th line, south of that Briar Hill and Greenbrier developments. Next slide, Carrie. You can see here we're proposing a minor expansion to Beaton, where Simcoe Manor is here. And then in this scenario, we do not propose growth in Tottenham. Next slide, please, Carrie. Okay, on to growth scenario 2. So this is where we have, we propose 85% of growth to Alliston, with minor expansions in Beaton and Tottenham. And about 85% of the total expansion remains adjacent to Alliston to the north, and then to the south and east. So we'll take a look at that. Carrie, next slide, please. Okay, so really the north proposal has not changed. You can see that we have King Street, Adjtos to the one side, Essa to the north, and we'll get to the south expansion here next. And you can see, I believe this is Tottenham. Oh, this is actually the Agtech town line. Just north is Kingsmere, that Kingsmere development. And that area outlined in blue is the proposed settlement area expansion, that pocket of land there. And the next slide, Carrie. And then we have the south again, to the south of our Briar Hill and Greenbrier estates there. Okay, next slide. And in this scenario here, we have the Simcoe Manor expansion, but we also have lands to the north of the Flatto Minister zoning order lands proposed as well as expansions to the Beaton settlement area. And now, next slide will outline the expansion to Tottenham. The area is outlined in blue to the north and also to the east in this scenario. And finally, we're on to growth scenario 3. So in this scenario, we propose 61% of growth to Alliston. I think that's a total expansion being about 310 hectares. So we're proposing just that north portion of Alliston. And then next slide, Carrie. We're expanding lands to Beaton, so Simcoe Manor and south of Simcoe Manor. And then again, the lands north of the minister's zoning order just outside of Beaton as well. And then finally, Tottenham, you can see we've expanded lands to the north of the St. Thomas Aquinas High School, and then to the east, and then additional lands to the northeast as well. So that's scenario 3. And then we have, in all of our growth scenarios, we have our employment areas. So next slide here, we're looking to expand the lands within the blue boundary again, south of Industrial Parkway, and then to the east and west of Tottenham Road, as well as those additional employment lands, again, south on Industrial Parkway, and just off to the side, almost at the intersection of the Agtech town line, but not quite there. So that's where we would like our employment lands to expand, or where we're proposing for them to expand. The journey so far. So what we've done so far, engaging with our community at large. So we have had internal steering committees, council working sessions. We've had our development community workshop with these growth scenarios. We held that in early March. And then we had our public launch event on March 5th with around 100 members of the public that attended. And we currently have our online survey, which is available for you to utilize. And please, we would welcome all input. And that survey is available online until May 31st. Next slide, please, Carrie. All right, now we have two discussion questions for you. The first one, what opportunities do you feel there are for the preservation and protection of our heritage assets when planning for these new community areas? So we'll start with that question. I know I'll read it again because I know there's a lot to it. And I welcome any feedback that anyone has. So what opportunities do you feel there are for the preservation and protection of heritage assets when planning for these new community areas?
If anybody wants to speak to this, you can just put your hand up and I'll call on you. Seems like people need a moment to think about it.
That's no problem.
Mm-hmm.
I have something I can add. I mean, I think it's important when area expansions are being considered to areas that are already very much in use, but perhaps a little bit run down in the area, and see if there's any possibility for some funding or other types of projects that could happen to revitalize some of the areas that already exist as well.
Okay, that's great.
Erica, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a question. This is kind of
Sure.
heritage meets environmental. I know that with all this additional building, I know particularly in Beaton on Center Street, this is a concern. There's a number of heritage buildings. It's going to affect our Heritage Conservation District. And there's already a bit of a flooding issue in Beaton. And as this new development continues, is that going to affect the heritage buildings that are already there? Has there been any research done into the potential flooding aspects as we build more? What's going to happen? Is there potential challenges there for that piece? And then also, every time you build new developments, there's always an influx of wildlife whose previous habitats were there, and then they go into buildings, especially heritage buildings, having gaps, holes. They're old buildings, they have these issues, but kind of those environmental factors affecting the heritage buildings as development grows.
That's a fair question, and there's a few components to that.
Mhm.
So the first, I believe, was addressing if new development would affect existing heritage buildings and structures. So the district, the Beaton Heritage Conservation District, is in full force and effect. It was approved by council in December of 2023, and the plan and the district as itself is in effect. So we have we have regulations for how those buildings are to be maintained and any type of development on those properties. We have we'll go through it in my next presentation, actually, what the plan means and what it consists of for our heritage properties. The next question about drainage, essentially new development must assess the drainage impacts to the existing and new areas that they're developing on. So there's quite a rigorous series of plans and studies that need to be completed in order to move forward with development. And one of those aspects is not to affect, it can't affect existing infrastructure. It has to improve it. It can't degrade it. There's capacity and engineering standards for the systems in place, and those standards must be maintained. So I hope that answers your question. It's more of an engineering question, but I hope I did it justice there.
No, thank you. Yeah,
No
sorry,
problem.
it's very multifaceted, so
That's okay. And then I believe the last aspect to your question was about wildlife. And through this process, we really try to prioritize the land at which we choose. So, environmentally protected lands such as woodlands, forests, wetlands, we don't typically develop those lands, and we do avoid them at all costs. And they're also regulated by a variety of bodies. So then our conservation authorities get involved, and there has to be impact assessments to make sure that adjacent development doesn't affect our natural heritage resources. So I hope that helps further explain our land prioritization as well.
Not quite for that part of the question. Sorry, I know I said a lot of things.
Okay.
My concern more was in terms of the heritage buildings that exist. I know from experience and every time there's a new development. So for instance, I used to work at a heritage home in Aurora. Every time
Okay.
there was a new development along the area, we had an influx of wildlife onto the property and into the building. Like we
Okay.
had new squirrels, new mice, new foxes, new raccoons running around because their habitats, which had previously been fields or empty lots, etc., have been disrupted. So I'm thinking more in terms to keep focus on the heritage aspect, looking at some kind of pest control management or support for heritage homeowners in the areas next to new developments, as all of those wildlife that live in what is essentially now fields are going to be displaced. And from experience, it does create additional stressors on the home, on the building owners, on the facility owners, as heritage buildings tend to have holes and divots and things like that as they're older buildings. But looking more from a pest control perspective, because these animals will be moving and displaced and need to go somewhere, and they tend to go to neighboring properties. And if there's heritage buildings on the neighboring properties, from experience, it does create a stressor for those property owners.
Okay. I think to address that item, we do have a variety of grant programs. Well, one in particular that I can think of available at the town currently through our community improvement plan that would address the improvement of heritage buildings. We actually have a grant program specifically for heritage buildings and properties. So that is available for current owners to utilize, and that is an application that can be made today for the improvement of buildings to hopefully assist with, mitigating holes, improving facades, things of that nature. I mean, it's mostly for facade improvements and but there's some building code improvements, things of that nature as well. So it is there is a range of items that are available for funding, but that's one item I believe. Well, one program we have available currently at the town.
Thank you.
No problem.
And Caitlin, just to clarify, or is that only for the heritage buildings that are in the Heritage Conservation District, or is it for any heritage building?
That's a great question. I know that it is for the Heritage District,
Yeah,
but I can let me go back and double check the CIP for other buildings.
I'm pretty sure that it's just for the Conservation District.
Okay.
But
okay.
You
Thank
can go
you.
ahead. Yeah, for sure. Check it out.
I will, and I'll get back to you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have any comments about this? Okay. All right.
Okay.
Doesn't look like there's any other questions.
Okay. And then our last question here, if you don't mind me asking, just quickly, what benefits do you see from your perspective of being on this committee for the downtowns and the existing neighborhoods of Alliston, Beaton, and Tottenham?
I'm going to jump in here.
Sure.
As I'm sure everyone is just. Oh, Erica's got a thought. Okay. You go first, Erica.
Sorry, I'll be quick. I can just to jump in. I do see benefit. I don't want to be all negative with my other questions, but I do see benefits. I think that most of my life I've lived in New Tech, and looking at Alliston, Victoria Street, for instance, you see as the population has grown, the stores, the communities, the neighborhoods have really improved. I really love walking down Victoria Street and going shopping and things like that. So I see a lot of economic development improvements from this, obviously, but I'm also hoping from a heritage perspective, a lot of those buildings on those main streets are historical, whether they're heritage designated or not. Victoria Street, Main Street, Beaton, obviously, even in Tottenham. So I'm hoping that what we can see from this growth and hopefully economic development is that business owners are able to maintain those buildings and have really strong heritage neighborhoods to walk through on our main streets through all of our villages. So I'm looking forward to that.
Great, thank you.
And Andrea, you want to jump in there?
Sure. I just to to add on to a couple of the notions that were mentioned earlier, it'll be interesting to see if there's opportunity for intensification in some of the existing neighborhoods in downtown. I know it doesn't directly pertain to the boundary expansion, but when we look at the overall growth management study, there seems as though with the numbers and that we're talking, there could be room. And that's always exciting. And I'm also really personally interested in seeing how we choose as a municipality to move forward with innovation around our parks and rec. And how do we move forward? What is our vision for our green and open spaces that are residing as both parkettes within our downtown cores as well as in existing neighborhoods? This type of growth and expansion always creates opportunity. And yeah, and I think that the innovation aspect of that is something that I'm looking forward to as a resident. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. Thank you for all that feedback. Carrie, next slide, please.
I'm going to jump in there too because I didn't get a chance
Sure.
to comment on that.
My apologies.
No problem. Sense of place. I think that the downtowns are an anchor for communities, and they're a gathering place. They help to set a culture for the area, and they distinguish us from other areas. Just looking at even the three communities, they're very diverse from one another, but it gives you a sense of place. You go to Beaton, it has a certain feeling to it, especially with the big, oh my gosh, agricultural lands smack in the
fairgrounds.
Not agricultural land. Sorry, what
The
am I thinking?
fairgrounds.
Fairgrounds.
You,
Thank you.
okay.
So yeah, I think that there's a sense of things moving from there that, our downtowns are part of where we meet one another, where we interact with one another in a positive way, and moving some of the traffic, some of the trucks, and maintaining them as pedestrian friendly environments is paramount. I mean, right now, Tottenham does not have that going on, and it would be such a different place if there were not trucks always driving through downtown. It'd be a much nicer place to walk around. And it would protect our heritage buildings if we didn't have the trucks moving through downtown. Same with Alliston. Those vibrations are not good for the foundations of our old buildings. So it's important with the growth, to work at maintaining a pedestrian-friendly downtowns. All right, I'm done.
Thank you. That's great. I'm just making notes here. Okay, thank you. All right, so this is the our engagement line items for what we have done in the past and what we will be doing. So we're looking to engage with a number of stakeholders upcoming events. So we have our fiscal impact analysis for this growth plan coming out. Hopefully June 5th to council. We'll have a development community workshop again for this fiscal impact analysis. And then we'll have a more public engagement as well. And then finally, we'll be looking to take this to council. So up next, as far as public engagement goes, the planning department will be at the Tottenham Home Show, April 20th, as well as Earthfest, April 27th. Next slide, please. All right, our next steps. So we are going to be gathering additional feedback. We're going to be updating council on our growth scenarios and the feedback that we received. We're going to be having an open house and a statutory public meeting. We will have additional community stakeholder events, and then our timing on engagement on preferred growth scenarios is June to September. So that's all I have to present on today, or for this topic today. Thank you all for your time, and we appreciate all of your input. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you so much for bringing that forward, Caitlin, for your presentation. Very informative. Yeah, so everyone, get involved, let people know about this, and the more feedback we get, the better it is. All right, so can I get a motion to receive the presentation from Caitlin? Thank you. Thank you. Did you get those, Carrie? All right. Correspondence and information items. I don't see anything. Unfinished business. I don't see anything. Is there anything that anyone wanted to bring forward? Unfinished? Nope. New business. Heritage Conservation District permit process. Is this you as well, Caitlin?
It is. Yes, thank you.
Awesome. All right, go ahead.
I'm sorry I'm going to be talking so much tonight. All right. Thank you, Carrie. Okay, so tonight I'll be for the last presentation I have to make tonight, I promise, will be on the heritage permitting process now that we have implemented our Heritage Conservation District plan. All right, so our overview here of our process, I'm going to get a little bit more in depth, but essentially this is our permit flow process. Next slide, Carrie, please. The first step is our development application review team pre-consultation meeting with the applicant in order to determine if we have a heritage permit on our hands. So once we determine that they're in the conservation district, we need to determine what type of heritage permit is applicable in this situation. Next slide, Carrie. So things that do not require a permit within the district are any type of interior works, installation of utilities, minor repairs to street fronting elements, repairs to the internal side and rear facade of the building, any repainting of wood or stucco, construction of residential patios or decks in the backyards, any type of repaving of existing driveways, soft landscaping, and roof repairs, or if they're using materials that are in kind to what is existing. Next slide, please, Carrie. Okay. Now we're going to get into our two-tiered permitting process. So we have the minor heritage permit process and the major heritage permit process. The minor process entails any type of alterations to the facade of the building, elements contributing to the building such as replacement of heritage attributes like decorative brickwork, window surrounds, storefronts, any type of signage, painting exterior brick surfaces that were never painted before, and any type of solar panels being installed on roofs, things like that. So that process, the minor heritage process, our staff, so internal staff, have delegated authority from council to process that permit. It is a faster process, so we let people know that we will review their application and provide them feedback in 60 days. And by feedback, I mean we either approve their heritage permit or we deny it. Essentially, we will review the application. Our Heritage Committee will be part of that reviewing process. And we will then take a recommendation to the Director of Planning, and we will make a staff decision on whether or not that permit could be issued. Major heritage permits are large changes. So we're talking about alterations to buildings and structures from that you can see from the street, additions that are visible from the street, any type of building relocations or demolition of buildings, any new buildings that are being constructed, any type of storefront replacements, or increase of parking areas in our heritage district. So these types of permits require council approval. Essentially, staff reviews the application. We will be circulating our Heritage Committee again for commenting, and then we will take all of the comments we receive and make a recommendation for council to make a decision. And then council will make a decision on whether or not we issue a permit or we deny a permit. Next slide, please. Okay, this is our district here. And next slide. I just wanted to point out what elements we have that our district is now comprised of, which I'm sure you're fully well aware of. We have our contributing residential properties outlined in orange. You can see here on the map. We have our contributing non-residential properties. So those are our storefronts in our downtown core area. And then we have supporting properties that may not have heritage features, but support our heritage properties. And then we have our public realm. So that's our civic core, our streetscape, and our fairgrounds. Next slide, please, Carrie. Okay, and then our next step is the application. So I just wanted to provide you a link to the application and show you the very first page of the application form. This is what people will be filling out and what you will be reviewing as part of the permit process. Okay. I wanted to mention, I don't believe I mentioned that major applications, so minor applications have the 60-day review window, major applications have a 90-day review window. And then as part of the circulation process to you, Council has directed now that this committee is a commenting agency on heritage permit applications. So I will be circulating for a 2-week period the application to you, and I will be asking you all to review that permit and provide comments back. And then your comments will help inform the recommendation to either the Director of Planning or Council. Okay, and now I'm just gonna, these are just pictures of buildings within the district, and I'm gonna introduce what each building is classified as. So could you click the slide, Carrie? So first up, we have 37 Main Street West, and this is our contributing residential property. So residential properties have buildings that were originally built for the use of a home, or they are currently used as a home for individuals residing in Beaton. Residential properties may currently or in the future be used for other purposes or a mix of purposes. The residential properties within the Heritage Conservation District are primarily located along Center Street North, with a few on Main Street as well. Conservation policies and guidelines will be considered when making alterations and or additions to residential property, including regular maintenance or changes to windows, roofs, materials, and the front and side yard landscaping. Our next type of property is our contributing non-residential property. So these properties are buildings which were originally built for commercial or institutional or a mix of uses. Our non-residential properties may currently or in the future be used for other purposes or a mix of purposes. These buildings are comprised, they form Beaton's downtown commercial area and are primarily located along Main Street. Institutional buildings are also located on Center Street. Conservation policies and guidelines will be considered when making alterations and additions to a contributing non-residential property, including maintenance, changing of storefronts, exterior walls, roofs, materials, windows, doors, and signage. Our next type of building is our supporting property. We have a total of 10 of them in our conservation district. These supporting properties may have more than one building, or they may be vacant and used for parking. These properties do not directly represent a heritage value or attribute, but they have the potential to support the character of the heritage district, and should the properties be altered or constructed upon. These are policies and guidelines that address alterations. They'll look at changes or demolition of supporting properties, including new developments, infill, in terms of street walls, building heights, design, materials, roofing, setbacks, facades, patterns, and features. Okay, and then the last building is our the library in Beaton, and that building is part of the public realm. So these the public realm consists of civic core areas, the fairgrounds, and streetscapes. So basically, the policies and guidelines for this area will be considered when making alteration and additions to public and civic realm features, which include trees, parks and green spaces, scenic views, lighting, street furniture, parking, driveways, fences, and public art. And then each section of this plan breaks down specific criteria for design standards. And I will be asking that you review the applicable section and provide comments based on your review of this applicable section. And are there any questions?
Thanks. I'll start off with a question.
Sure.
The first slide, you were talking about the minor and the major,
Yes.
and there's a 60-day turnaround time for the
Minor.
minor.
Yep.
Does that require a special meeting, or are those comments that you're going to receive online?
It does not require a special meeting. I would hope to just receive them via email
Okay.
from yourselves. Mhm.
Right. Anyone else have any questions? I'm not seeing any.
Oh,
Oh, Chris.
sorry. I'm trying to use my little hand raise and I couldn't find it. I apologize. Just a quick one, and maybe we already have answers to this. But I was just wondering who oversees the projects once they get the permits to ensure that they're following through with what has been allowed to them? Like, is there follow-up afterwards? Is it done during?
That's a great question. And it would be basically every application that we review at the town that other than a building permit, what people design and propose to us is what we expect to be built. And if they don't, there is a bylaw complaint process available. So if you do notice something that is not what was outlined in an application, then you can submit a complaint to bylaw, and then bylaw will go investigate.
Okay, so it is very possible that someone could completely do the opposite of what has been asked of them.
It is, but quite honestly, that is something that could happen with a zoning bylaw amendment. It could happen with, the building department encounters that as well. When they go on site inspections, sometimes, work is not to code or whatever the case is. So we do have an enforcement side of this, and we're working with bylaw to go through that process.
That's great, thank you.
No problem.
I have another question,
Sure.
which is, again, with the minor variance, it spoke to certain things like painting brick that's never been painted, and
Mhm.
there's other sort of things. Are there guidelines that the planning department is going to supply to us?
Yes. Thank you. That's an excellent question. Thank you. All of this information, yes, we do have specific guidelines. They're outlined within the plan. And that plan is available. We have a webpage dedicated to the Beaton Heritage District. It has been updated and revamped from perhaps the public consultation that you worked so hard on. So I have the website has now been updated. The plan is available online, and I would ask that you utilize that plan just because that is where we will keep the most up-to-date plan available for you to utilize. We're not looking at amending the plan anytime soon, but we like to keep everything in one area for everyone to access. So those guidelines are embedded within each section, the expectations, the sizing for storefronts, and signage, the lettering that is supposed to be utilized on signs. That's all within that the plan itself and outlined specifically for the applicable section for whatever the building is classified as.
All right, perfect. Thank you.
No problem.
All right, I'm not seeing any other questions. Oh yeah, go ahead, Lainey.
I'm just wondering, for our properties that are designated heritage but outside of that Beaton district, would they be following a similar, right? Like if those properties wanted to make alterations and they're going through an application process, would it be that same?
That's a great
process?
question.
This came up before and kind of came to committee and we were all kind of like, I don't know.
So I can answer that question. To be honest, no. Those properties would need a separate set of guidelines. This is the bylaw that we've implemented is specifically for the district itself, and it is a line on a map, and everything within that boundary has this plan applicable to it. So if you're looking for guidelines for buildings outside of the conservation district, now that being said, some of the buildings that are designated as heritage buildings are within the district. So the plan would apply to those buildings and properties, but anything outside of that, it would not be applicable to.
Okay, so the kind of answer, the loose answer that we had before was that the bylaw written for each heritage designated property is basically the only guidelines currently. So like my home is designated, and I wasn't sure if I could change my front door color. This is how it came up. And I was like, well, this is a good process for us to go through and try to figure that out. And the answer that we received at the time from Vanessa Leo was that it's just based on the bylaw that would be written for that property. If there isn't something specific about like the architecture or a specific color or paint chip, then it's okay that you can do that without getting town permission. So that sounds like where we're at with those for right now.
Correct. Yes.
Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you for bringing that up, Lainey. It's really important for people to recognize that, designating your house doesn't mean that you can't change things to it. And both of us have designated houses, and we've both gone through the process of renovating them. And so, the more experience that the town gets with heritage, the better, and the quicker the process will be. When I went through for my porch, it took way too long. Part of it was COVID, but part of it was that it was a clunky system. There wasn't a lot of experience with how to put that application through. Now, eventually it happened, eventually went through, but if it was clear and laid out the way that this is clear and laid out, that'd be very helpful for the couple of us who have heritage properties and want to go ahead and do things. So, Caitlin, is that something that is on the radar of the planning department?
Not at the moment. We've been very focused on getting this heritage district implemented and then a permit process implemented as well.
Mm-hmm.
So that has been our focus, and where we do have a few properties within the heritage district that will be coming forward. So I've been communicating with those property owners to process these permits that will be coming to you for review. But it is something that I have thought about, and I believe I had a few conversations with our Parks and Rec team, and it's something that they are aware of as well. And it's something that this committee could investigate further on how we could bring design standards to those properties that are not located in the district.
I think it might be helpful, like where we're always looking at expanding and adding, new properties. I know we're in a funny time right now without Vanessa and that job being sort of in limbo currently, but for wanting people to designate their homes, I think the more clear we can be about what that means and what that looks like, the better we are.
Totally agreed. The better, like the clearer it is about what you can and cannot do, the easier it is for us to sell designating your house as something that you can do as part of your, good stewardship of your property, rather than, putting handcuffs on you and making it difficult for you to do anything. All right. Thank you so much for your presentations. And I would just offer to any of the committee members that if you ever have any questions, just reach out to Caitlin. She's great at getting back to you and happy to speak to you.
Thank you. Thank you
yeah,
very much. I was just going to add, you will be seeing a permit coming in the next few weeks, hopefully. And when that's the case, I would have liked to bring it to this committee today to review together. So it just was not submitted in time for this meeting. However, I'm always happy to answer questions and go through the plan with you. And perhaps at a future meeting, we can review a hypothetical application or an actual application together to identify what should be reviewed for a permit when we're looking at a permit.
I see a lot of nodding heads. That sounds like a great idea. I think that the committee would love to be able to do that.
Great.
All right, so I'll get
Thank
a
you.
motion to receive the presentation. Thank you, Lainey. Thank you, Chris. All those in favor? There's very much not doing all this voting and now I'm like, okay, we might as well do it. So next, 5B, ACO request to provincial government. there's 3 pieces of correspondence, and I think this is where we're getting to that request to bring a motion forward. So is that going to be you, Katie?
Yes, it is.
All right, go Katie.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I apologize for having my camera off. I am under the weather today, so I'm going to keep my talking brief, but I'm here to answer any questions that you may have. If anyone had a chance to read through the attachments that Carrie sent, I just received them myself when I got back from a conference, so that's why they were just sent out within the last couple of days. But the Architectural Conservancy of Ontario has sent in a letter to the province. We're all aware of this looming January 2025 date where we will lose our significant property list, and those properties will not be able to be eligible again to be designated in any way for 5 years. So it really, they lose a lot of protection. We did reach out at the end of last year to those properties. We have just over 30 properties on our significant property list. And there was only, one that was interested in proceeding with designation. We know right now that we haven't been designating without the homeowner's permission, which is another issue. But essentially, unless we were to enforce designations on these 30 properties, which it's just not realistic, unfortunately, within the time frame of January 1st, 2025. A lot of municipalities are kind of banding together because we're all in the same situation. There are municipalities with thousands of significant properties that are at risk. So this is what everyone has decided to do to try to, implore the government to reconsider this January 2025 deadline. So there is a motion, if the committee would like to make a motion to recommend that our council and our mayor send out a letter to the premier. They have sent along lovely templates which are available for everybody to go through. But I just wanted to bring this to the committee's attention and see what your thoughts were.
So Vanessa, before the meeting, had sent out an email, I think earlier this week, saying that she was hoping that the committee would bring forward this motion. So I'm going to put forward this motion, or if somebody else would like to do it, that's fine too. Just put up your hands. I can see you off to the side there. Can I get somebody to second bring forward this motion? Thank you, Chris. Yeah, so we'll bring this motion forward to council, and hopefully they'll get the support. All right, any discussion on the motion, Carrie?
I just wanted to clarify. So is everyone comfortable with the wording in this motion? And where would you like this letter sent to? I would need some
Sure.
direction on that.
Yeah, so if we can bring this forward without having to go through council, can we recommend this motion go directly to the premier? Or do we have to make this motion and have it passed by council?
We would need a recommendation from council
Right.
to
So
have
that's
this passed. Yeah.
That's right. So that was my recommendation, is that we bring this forward to council.
Okay. And so.
And then in terms of who it's going to go to
Yeah.
from council, yeah. So everything that's on there.
So everything on there is okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just wanted to clarify. Thank you.
We can also add on our MP.
Our local.
Our MPP.
Yeah.
Our
Yeah.
local MPP.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anybody have anything else to add or change? All right, all those in favor? Looks like we got everyone. All right, thank you very much. All right, let's go back to our agenda. There's 2 other correspondence pieces on there. Katie, was there other things that you want to speak to?
No, just an extra
Okay.
couple of templates that related to the same issue.
Right. Okay, perfect. Thank you. Well, everyone, that's it. I think we will be hearing from Caitlin in the next little while, which will be exciting. And if you have any items that you want to add to the next agenda, you can bring them forward now or send a note over to our staff. Anyone have anything they want to bring forward?
I don't have anything to bring forward, but I might have a request. This might be for Carrie. If we're having items that are going to council, are we able to get a notification of when those are going to be at council so that we can either go to attendance support or watch online, just so that we know when they're going?
Yes, so typically when a report goes to council, I will send the report with the date that it's going to committee of the whole. And then, yeah, unfortunately it hasn't been since October.
Yeah,
So, yeah, so there's been some time lapse, but certainly, yeah. So as soon as this report's done, this report for this meeting will not be going until, sorry, just let me check my calendar here. This will not be going until, sorry, just bear with me 1 second. The 13th of May, to committee.
Well, just so we can show our support for the motion.
Certainly.
Asking to be passed. Thanks.
All right, that's great. Anybody else have anything?
I was just going to say thank you, Shira, and I will start thinking about our next big project and asking around within the Ward 8 community if there's any Chris, I'll be knocking on your door. What are we but anyway, it's a good call to action, Shira.
Yeah.
So thank you.
You're welcome. Do we know when our next meeting is scheduled for?
Yes, our next meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, June 18th at 7 p.m.
Okay. Can we look at, I don't know if this is interesting to people, can we look at having this next meeting at the new council chamber, at the new town hall?
Okay, so that would be another recommendation that we would have to bring forth to council,
Okay.
because right now we are strictly via Zoom.
Mhm.
So if you would like to have the meetings in person, we can certainly do that. But I will have to bring it forth to the next meeting.
Yeah,
which-
this is just for one meeting. It doesn't
just
necessarily
for
have to
one?
be.
Just
Yep,
for
doesn't have
one.
to be all of them. I think
Okay,
that this would be an
okay.
opportunity for, I think the more people who check out the new building, myself included, because I haven't checked it out yet, it would be nice. We haven't met in person, this group, ever, and this would be a nice time.
And
do
I
that.
think our first hopefully our first council meeting will be the June 17th at Town Hall. So yes, I will certainly set up that room for us and have it available.
Great.
Okay. Is 7 o'clock still okay for everybody, or earlier, or
7's good. If
7's
we're
good?
gonna be in person too, I
okay.
think.
Okay. All right. So in person. Perfect.
All right, maybe we can, all us Tottenham people can carpool up there.
Yeah, I can walk, so I might be biased.
Beautiful. I have a quick question. I don't know if it's meant for right now or not, but I was just wondering, going back a little bit, just on the 30 houses that we have on the significant list. Do we have those kind of prioritized in the ones that we feel are the most significant of those properties? That we would
Yeah.
start looking at to maybe, I don't know,
Yeah,
do
they're not
or something?
they're not officially ranked right now, but staff have certainly kind of our top ones that if we were going to, move ahead with designations of a couple, which ones would probably be the easiest to recommend to the committee, that would be well supported.
Thank you, Katie. I was just wondering, just because we're already like in Q2 of the year
Mhm.
with something that's supposedly closing out on us really quickly. So if things don't go to our plan, or do we have a plan?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, it's not an ideal plan, but and hopefully, I know there's probably been some questions since Vanessa has left and what will be happening. There are discussions underway as to what is going to be happening with that position, and so I will know by the next meeting and be able to fill you guys in on what things will look like. And I just wanted to, I hope Caitlin, I don't know if you're still listening there, but please do go and check out the website for the Beaton Heritage District. Caitlin did an amazing job updating it. We're lucky to be able to tap into her skills here in the planning department.
Thank you, Katie. I can follow up to Carrie with a link to the webpage and my contact information to follow.
Thanks, Caitlin.
Anytime. Thank you.
All right, everyone. Motion to adjourn. Everyone puts their hand up. And we are adjourned. Thank you very much.